A very warm welcome to Chatham House, everyone. I'm Bronwyn Maddox, I'm the director. And an extremely warm welcome to Dr. Jaishankar, External Affairs Minister of India, who's going to talk to us about India's rise and role in the world. And he needs, I say this sometimes about our guests, but I will say about you, needs no introduction, but let me just add a few things to the things that you will know about him. One of the, I'm going to say, longest standing foreign ministers around. You've survived longer than many since 2019. And is also a member of the upper house of India's parliament from Gujarat, was foreign secretary from 2015 to 18, ambassador to the US, to China, Singapore, and the Czech Republic, and has also served in other diplomatic assignments in Moscow, Colombo, Budapest, and Tokyo. And I say that because people who have a span of the world are particularly valuable these days. And very, very glad that you have come here to talk about a wide range of things. So I was saying to you upstairs, I want to start with geopolitics and then go on to some things about the British-Indian relationship and then come to some questions about India at the end. Please, everyone, do start thinking of your questions. We're going to chat for about half an hour, and we have a clean hour here. It is, just to make the point, on the record, being recorded and live streamed. And if you want to ask a question and you're in the hall, please do the conventional thing of sticking up your hand, and I will do my very best to come to you. If you're online, welcome again. And if you send in your questions using the Q&A box, I will do my best to pick out them as well. So with that, welcome.
Thank you.
Let's start with what we can call geopolitics, but that one word is standing for rather a lot these days. What do you make of the first 41 days of the US's new foreign policy? Is it good for India? Is it good for the world?
Well, it's interesting. And I think, and some of it, I must say in all honesty, is not surprising. Mm-hmm. If you actually tracked it and assume that most of the time, political leaders at least do much of what they promise to do. They do not always succeed, or they do not always get everything they want, but as a general principle, when people, when political forces or political leaders have an agenda, and particularly if it is one which they have developed over a fairly long period of time and have been very articulate, even passionate about it, then I think much of what we have seen and heard over the last few weeks was to be expected. So I'm a little surprised that people are surprised. Now, that said, is it good for India? In many ways, I would say yes. My Prime Minister was in Washington about 2 weeks ago. I had accompanied him. I was myself there for the presidential inauguration. And when I look at our interests and our expectations of the relationship, I think there's a lot of promise we see there. Conceptually, I think we see a president and an administration which, in our parlance, is moving towards multipolarity. And that is something which suits India.
When you say that they are moving towards multipolarity, do you mean accepting or even encouraging there being many poles of power in the world?
I think practicing, and by practicing, promoting. That, since 1945, one tends to think and talk about the United States as US and the Western world. So it's more like a bloc rather than a nation. I think what is quite clear is the US's own self-perception is now more as a nation and perhaps a little less as a bloc. not entirely, one and not the other, but definitely the needle has moved in the direction of a more national personality and a more national analysis of its self-interest. If one looks, at our own relationship politically, to be very honest with you, we've never had any issues with American presidents, at least in recent times. There's no baggage which we carry or burden that the relationship carries. I think from President Trump's perspective, the one big shared enterprise that we have is the Quad. And the Quad is an understanding where everybody pays their fair share. So there's no spat about who's paying for whom. There are no free riders in Quad. So that's a good model for which works, which was restarted during President Trump's first term. And if I were to look at some of the big priorities of this president, many of them actually work for us. He seems to be, for example, committed to keeping energy prices reasonably affordable and stable. We welcome that. He is putting a lot of emphasis on tech, on the development of tech, on the use of tech as a game changer in global politics. I think that offers a lot of possibilities, for us. He appears open to connectivity initiatives of a certain collaborative nature. We have deep interest in that. So I would say, and of course, he has a certain view of trade, as you may have noticed.
I was sitting here thinking we've got this far without mentioning trade or indeed tariffs, and I was wondering where you thought India would come out of this great tariffs exercise.
I was coming there, bit by bit.
Good.
I'm
just making sure we get that.
We had a very open conversation about it, and the result of that conversation was that we agreed on the need for a bilateral trade agreement. And our trade minister, in fact, is there in Washington doing exactly that right now.
I was thinking as you were talking, the piece in the Financial Times by Martin Wolf this week saying the West is over. Do you think that's right?
I wouldn't put it so sharply, but I would say today there are clearly, American interests are more sharply defined. And I suspect so are European interests. I'm not sure where exactly Britain is, probably non-aligned between the two. But it's very clear.
It's possible that it has not yet sharply defined its interests.
Yes.
But we might come on to Britain in a moment. But just staying with this picture, I would love to hear more about where India is going to position itself. Multipolarity, as you said. There is China. We still don't know exactly what the US might choose to do with China. It's clearly bringing Russia a bit more in from the cold. Where is India going to put itself in this position?
Vis-a-vis the US or vis-a-vis
US and China, yes. All this is shifting.
Look, our endeavor, at least for the last decade, has been to try to see if we can actually develop all the big relationships in a way, and the non-big relationships as well. In parallel, we understand that each one of them is different. Sometimes the issues are different. I'm not saying that it means being equidistant or behaving the same with everyone. I think in each case, it has to be customized, it has to be assessed. And then you look at, what are the advantages and what are the challenges and what are the benefits and what are the risks, and you arrive at a certain position or equilibrium. And if we can do that successfully, with all the major powers and groupings, that actually puts you in a much better position in a world which we could see was heading towards multipolarity. So it's, I mean, think of it really as, in a sense, from what used to be said was a very bipolar world, which wasn't entirely true, and then a unipolar, which also wasn't entirely true. But today, if you have many more centers of decision making, many more sources of influence, many more discussions with multiple players to really address any solution or any situation, I think that's the kind of world, and I think the country which has the maximum flexibility and the least problems is obviously better off in that world, and that's our endeavor.
That's a really interesting point. I remember you saying on the platform at the Munich Security Conference, not this year, the big J.D. Vance year, but last year, you were on the platform with Antony Blinken, which seems a long time ago. And you were saying, well, look, we're going to trade with Russia, to some extent, oil and some military support, and we'll trade with you. And he looked, meaning the US, and he looked startled at that. But that is the kind of flexibility you're talking about.
No, I don't think, to be fair to him, I don't think he was startled. I mean, by that time, we'd been doing it for some time.
Yes. Maybe not surprised, but still, I'm going to stick with startled for the directness of your position.
You know, look, we've always been very honest about it. We've been honest about it, and I must say, even in 2022, we had discussed it at some length with the American administration, and I say this to their credit. They were also quite understanding about it, because you know, one issue which has been, in a sense, distorted, the whole energy trade. The fact is that after 2022, you did not want the Ukraine conflict to trigger a global energy crisis. We did not want to see global inflation, and which meant that somebody had to buy Russian oil if the oil markets had to be kept at a reasonable price. So I think there was an understanding about the need for that, and in fact, I remind people, you know, that was one of the reasons why there was a very conscious decision not to, you know, mix that trade with sanctions. So I think people have been very sober and very, I would say, sensible about insulating the global economy from that particular aspect. So we've been very, you know, honest about it, because I would rather tell our partners and the rest of the world up front what we are doing. I see no reason why we should be, you know, less than direct in any way.
What about the BRICS? What would India like the BRICS to be? Economic grouping or ideological one? What's the value of it going to be?
You know, look, it's hard to put a label on it, and we all like putting labels. I mean, that's what we do for a profession. I mean, that's why you have you do what you do, and I do what I do. But some things are not so easily defined, and BRICS is one for this reason. I can't say that it's, you know, I couldn't put an ideological label on it, in the sense, if you look at the BRICS members, even the original members, we are a very diverse group. We are an exception to the normal rules on which groups are formed. I mean, normally countries who are proximate geographically to each other or have some particular shared history or some kind of ethnic or linguistic commonality, this is normally the basis to create a group. Now, BRICS defies all those assumptions. So it's not like the Commonwealth, it's not like the NATO, it's not like the G7. It's not like anything which had been conceptualized earlier. What it had, I mean, if I were to really look at what brought BRICS countries together, it was a sense among very major powers that they were not getting their due place or due share of global conversations and decision making, and they would be better off if they came together and then, shall I say, sent a collective message. So that is how BRICS started, and since then I think clearly they must be doing something right if so many countries want to join BRICS, and so many countries actually have joined BRICS. So we've had an expansion from the original 4. South Africa joined, and then it has become a double-digit membership in Joburg in 23, and in 24 last year in Kazan we also added dialogue partners, the concept of dialogue partners. So the group has grown. Yes, we do discuss economic issues. We also discuss political issues. It's not like we don't. So I wouldn't straitjacket it. I wouldn't. It's, as I said, it's hard to find a single adjective which would do BRICS justice.
Do you see a role for India in acting as an intermediary in any of these current conflicts? I'm thinking of the role that Saudi Arabia has taken on in at least bringing the US and Russians together in Riyadh. India has been carefully not committed itself on Ukraine, but do you see a role for India in this?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I'll only tell you what we have been doing so far. It'll be hard for me to predict what could happen in the future. We have been one of the few countries who have been regularly talking to both Moscow and Kiev at various levels. My Prime Minister has been talking to President Putin and to President Zelensky. We have met with the presidents, the ministers, the national security advisors, the defense ministers. So, at various points of time, if there was a moment or an occasion when our weighing in was useful, we have tried to do that. Mostly, it has been very specific. For example, in the summer of 2022. At that time, the Black Sea grain corridor was sought to be constructed, and there were some hesitations in Russia. So a few other countries approached us to, including Turkey, which had the lead, to press the Russians on that. We did that. When the Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant came under firing, we actually were approached by the Ukrainians to pass messages on to the Russians, which we did, and they had something to say, which we communicated back. We worked a little bit with Mr. Grossi in IAEA on that. So wherever there's been sense that, okay, India can do something, somebody has come to us and said, would you be willing to do that? We've always been open-minded about it. To the extent we proffered advice, we have largely done that in the privacy of a room. We have spoken our mind to both countries, both leaders. Our view has been that they need to do direct negotiations. That's been our consistent position. We have never advised them what should be the format and what should be the terms of the negotiations. That is their business. But if, and I would say this, every time we've had a significant and useful conversation with either of them, we have taken the approval of President Putin to share this with the Ukrainians and President Zelensky to share it with the Russians. So we have kept that going. But beyond that, as I said, we have never, it's never been up, we haven't done a peace plan or, put out a particular view. We don't think that is appropriate. I think this is an issue where the parties involved have to decide for themselves. And we also understand the stakes that Europe has in this matter. We understand the interest which the United States has in this matter. We hear it from the Russians that they too feel that there are other parties to be engaged. So I think we have done whatever was the right thing to do in the most helpful manner, and will continue to do that.
Let's come on